going along, they were husking corn up on the farm where on the Braga farm. That's where the farm that Robert got. And of course it was in the fall, and I got cold. Then I wanted my mother to take me home. Well, of course she would take me home. They were husking corn. Well, they finally started out. I went halfway home, then I run back. I finally did get home. I was pretty cold, but that's all. I learned one thing: it's best not to do something that they tell you not to do. Well, I started school at 5, and I was getting along pretty good in school. And Christmas time I got sick. Later on, for a couple of weeks, then the doctor come out, put mustard plaster on my chest, put me in the bedroom with the windows open in January, and God, it was cold. Well, the next week the doctor come along, old Doc McKellar, and they had me in the bedroom downstairs. And we went out, and my dad asked me, how is he doing? Well, he says, if he lives, he won't amount to a damn. So that didn't set very good with me. My mother come in, and she said, is there anything I could do for you? And I said, yes, I'd like to go back to the stove, put some pillows there, and I'd like to be in there. But the doctor said you should stay in bed. He also said I was going to die, and I don't want to die in this cold room. And that's what saved my life, because by night time I was coughing up some of that stuff. But I missed the rest of the school year, so I had to take my class over again. Well, Lloyd started school a year after I did, and so we were just a year apart in school. And I don't know how Lloyd ever got through school, because he was in the corner most of the time. Then Robert started at 4, so there was 3 of us trudged through snow. God, we walked over fences. There was a lot of snow back those days. And it was, oh, I don't know how many years. And we had, I kind of forgot about all those years from 1st to 3rd to 6th grade. 6th grade we had a teacher by the name of Wilmer Severson, and we about tore the school down, and he didn't pay no attention to anything we did. We didn't learn anything. But we had a kid, he didn't have his lesson, he'd throw a rock through the window. And believe it or not, Ernie Mullivan, he was a customer of mine. He was a character. He was still a character. And then the next year they hired Joyce Shaddock. She was taught in school forward. And the going run was $75 a month for a teacher. They paid her $100 to straighten us out. I don't know what those kids did. I didn't get in on that. She like 17 in one day. They all had to cut their own thing. Clifford Johnson, he wasn't going to cry, but she whacked him one across the face, and that finished. Then he let go. And you know, we liked her the best of any teacher we ever had, because we had a good baseball team. She played baseball with us and everything, so she was. And I always, she was from Chippewa Falls, and I always threatened to stop and see her, but never got around to see her. She was a wonderful person. Well, there was a lot of fighting in school, and we had a big kid that if he picked you, if he was caught first pump all the way, he'd beat you up, so nobody would catch him. I made up my mind I thought I could lick him, but boy, I whaled up every time. That summer, Sam Augie wanted somebody to drive for the hay loader and hay fork. And he had done some boxing, he had some boxing clothes, so I said I'd work. he said what I wanted, and I said I wanted his boxing gloves, and I wanted him to teach me how to box. For the first day of school, I made it a point to get caught, be the last one, so I caught this guy. And of course he thought he was going to wrestle me now, and every time he got close I peppered him. I had him blood all over his face. And then the bell rang and we had to go in. So, of course, what chance did I have? He was all blood and so I had to sit after school a whole month, and we always had a dealing where we never squeal on each other. So the other kids walk slow and I run. I think it was 15 minutes we had to sit after school for a whole month. So the other kids walk slow and I'd catch up. But then we weren't too smart, you know, and I got out, then we got home 50, and then the folks wanted to know how come so, well, we walk faster, but they knew better. But about that time the World War was going on, and Alvin, that was my half-brother, he was in the Army. And I'll never forget the day the war was over. Pete Peterson had a manure pile that he'd been piling up, and he wanted help. So Bill Corp was laid off in Moline, and they were living in Blanchardville. He had a Model T Ford, and we could hear, we were down on the old Grandpa Peterson's farm, and we heard the racket. So Pete was out spreading the manure. We were loading another wagon. Bill said, "Let's go to Blanchardville." I was just a kid, but boy, I got in on quite a celebration when the war was over. Well, along when I was about, I suppose, 12 or 13, Pete Peterson then lived up in the old Harrison place, and they just had a baby, and I was up there, and then my job was they'd cultivate corn, and they'd go like the Dickens. They were supposed to uncover as fast as they covered. That was a heck of a job. So I was there for 2 summers. But then, that next year, Hans was 21, and he got $800. Those kids all got $800 when they were 21. Well, he left home. He also got married. He married Goldie. But he left her with the folks and went down and stayed with Andy and Daisy all winter. He lost the car, and everything he had broke. So my dad always went to town on Saturday, and the old man, Goldie's dad called him, what kind of a family are you anyway to marry a woman and leave her? So that's when my dad bought the Ivy farm. Well, lo and behold, that's where I ended up on the Ivy farm for 2 years. Except for the January and February, then I'd stay at O.R. Olson's. And the Hans hadn't improved a great deal. He'd go to town, wouldn't get back. God, we'd have cows to milk, and I'd have to get up so doggone her. And then Dad bought an old gray horse and a road cart. And I drove that, and the dang kids in town, they would mess up your harness, so you'd have a heck of a time. And I did that for about a month, and I said, the heck with the horse. So I walked across lots. That was about, at least a couple of miles, maybe a mile and a half shorter. And then I walked with a gal, I can't remember what her name, she was a relative anyway, so we'd come in on F then instead of the other way. And I did that for 2 years. Well, when I started high school, they were terrible with country kids. Boy, we had 27 the first day of school, there was 27 freshmen. In less than a month, we were down to 17, and that's what graduated my class. They were all boys, and they'd pick on you. And I was kind of lucky. There was many days in the school, the guy ripped my pants open in front of a bunch of girls, and I popped him one. He was standing at the head of the steps, and he fell down. The principal come on, it's a good thing, because he'd probably got hurt. And into the office we went. Well, he said, "What do you do that for?" And I didn't have my pants buttoned yet, so I said, "Well, nobody does that in front of a bunch of girls with me and gets by with it." So I thought, boy, wait till after school, I'll get the daylights on and beat out of it. Nobody ever bothered me. But not because they were, I think he was told that if he ever did anything like that again, he would be, and they would kick you out of school. When we went to high school, we had wore neckties and white shirts. You had to be dressed up every day. I remember one, Bob Thompson, the same guy I popped, come to school one day with high-top boots. They sent him home. Had to go home and change shoes. He lived in town. So it was a different world than today. We didn't get by with anything in school because the teachers really had, and they'd have as many as, well, there's only, I suppose, 70 in schools, maybe not even that many, I don't remember. Well, in 28, I graduated from high school. And then I stayed home for a year. And the year I stayed home was when my mother died. And then the next year, of course, Lloyd was out of school, so and I left to, well, I worked out of Jeglum for 2 summers. I worked one summer before 29, and that, I only worked the 3 months, and yeah, I was getting, I think I got $65 a month the second year, and that was a nice, they were nice people to work with. The only thing was, she was raising, she called when we had toast and egg with just toast for breakfast. God, that was a very good, loading hay with that. So I told Adolf Zimmerman was our cheesemaker, and he couldn't talk English, so he says, "Well, I'll have breakfast for you every morning when you come. I'll have a glass of milk and a cheese sandwich." He had made good cheese, so things went pretty good. Well, I was there for 2 summers. I worked there, and then, of course, the 3rd year, then Lloyd was home, so I had to go and get a job, and they were hard to come by. I did buy a Model T sedan. That dang thing wouldn't pull a hen off a nest, but it was transportation. So I couldn't get a job anywhere around home. I ended up working for Walter Strife. I was getting, I think, $55 $50 a month, I guess it was. And milk went down 5 cents every month, you know, gosh. So the farmers had a meeting. They're going to cut our wages to $40. Well, I wasn't too happy because we got up at 4 and we worked till 9 every day. And so I was about ready to quit. Had my clothes all packed, ready to leave. I told them, I'll work for nothing for Saturday, and I'll help you milk Sunday, and by Sunday you can have a hired man, because men were a dime a dozen. There was plenty. Well, I had my clothes all loaded, and the old Emmanuel come up and he said, "Walter, what do you think? You're going to let him go? You'll have to hire 2 men because you can't milk, and he can milk. I paid the $10, So I had to unload my stuff and stay. Well, they were nice people. Well, then that fall, Andrew Jeglum come along and he said, "You come up and run my farm." Well, I like a dummy did that. I got up there, God, everything was in bad shape. There was no doors were falling off, there was no fences. Come to find out, only half the cows were in calf. So, but I was kind of lucky again. Romney Sutter couldn't afford a man anymore, so he said, "I'll give you $1 a day when you help me." So I got $1 a day besides running the farm. Then I could go and work for him enough so I'd have some spending money. And then we belonged to some kind of a cheese federation. They went broke, so we did a couple of months we didn't get anything. Wasn't getting much anyway because we didn't have much milk. But in the meantime, I fenced the whole thing and I fixed up the barn. And I thought, well, next year I'll be in good shape. But lo and behold, about the week before Christmas, well, Ernie says, "You better look for a job the 1st of March because I'm going to hire a man again." Well, I said, "If that's the case," I wasn't very happy, I wasn't very nice to him, but I said, "I'm done today, I'm leaving." So I left that day, went home. You know, we always had a home to go to, we always got something to eat there. So I was going with Dora Brewson at the time, and Tom Hill wanted to go to barber's school. We wanted to go to Milwaukee. Well, I traded off that Model T for a 1930 Chevy, heck of a nice car. And so I said, "Well, I got a good car, we'll go down there." So we went down there, and I listened to that guy tell him how great barber business was. Took it hook, line, and sinker. I decided I'm going to be a barber. Well, I think that hurt my dad more than anything I ever did. He said, "I never saw a barber that had anything or amounted to anything, and you want to be one of them." So, but I went anyway. And then I was through school and I got a job on Center Street, 3rd chair, 15 cents for a haircut, 15 cents for a shave, and 65% of that. Heck, I didn't hardly make $1 a day. But in the meantime, I was looking for other jobs. And then the banks closed. So here I was in Milwaukee. Oh, I didn't have much. Oh, and then my dad said, "Don't carry much money in the city now." So I had it hid in the closet. And it must have been the guy that owned the place. Stole that, so then I was dead broke. So I wrote home. My dad sold the cow. He got $25 for the cow. Well, the $25 was gone. I was really in trouble. I couldn't ride home again. So if you had 2 cents, you could get a penny's worth of peanuts, about all you could eat. So you could live on 2 cents a day, and you had to have a nickel to buy coffee for breakfast. You could eat all the bread ends, the crust that you wanted. You know, one day I had to take Monday off whether I wanted to or not. So I got on the barber school and hang around there, and there was a guy in there who wanted a barber, and nobody wanted the job. So I said to Fink, "How come nobody wants that job?" "Why, it only pays $3 a week, room, board, and washing. And she's got to be a terrible cook. If she doesn't cook, if I don't eat better than what I've been eating." So, but he wanted a shave and a haircut, shampoo and a massage. And I had no tools. So Julius Delikowski was this Polish kid. I'll never forget him because well, things were tough and they didn't have no place to go on Sunday, Easter Sunday, and he said, well, you can come to my house. Well, I thought he was an only kid, you know, so well, he told me where he lived, and says, he says, there's a Lutheran church right across the street from the Catholic church. He says, I get out a little soon, but I'll wait for you. When I got out to their house, they had 4 kids besides him. But we got 2 good meals. And I'll never forget Julius. And I never saw him again after I left down there. I got to give Post his haircut, shaving, massage, and he says, when can you start? Well, I said, boy, I thought quick. I was in Milwaukee, didn't have a nickel. I said, have you got room? You could, I'd get a ride. Oh, he was tickled pink. So I had to be out on, I can't remember the name, town of this. I knew I got there anyway, and that's how I got the plane. Well, I hadn't been there a week. My dad called up, and he called up Post, and he said, could he have Monday off? So he wanted to go up to Ellis and see how they were doing up there. And well, he said, we weren't busy, you know. We worked nights, 4 nights a week, every day, 6 days a week. So I'm along, and then, oh, it's colder than old blazes, you know. We got to Richland Center, and he said, well, we better have a glass of beer. Well, I said, I don't want no beers. That car he had didn't have a heater in it. God, it was zero outside. Well, he got, I said, you can't get a drink in Richland Center anyway because it's dry. Oh, I don't want to get, so I think he got his beer, and I said, I'll have a shot of whiskey. He had that too. We started out again, and then he started talking about when we were kids. He said, remember the time you and Lloyd and Curtis Jeglum stole apples from Otto Jeglum? Yeah, I remember that. Remember how sick you got? Yeah, I remember that too. Well, he says, you know, Otto wasn't in Chicago. I knew that. But I wanted to teach you that it wasn't very smart to see it. But we went, when we got home that day, he said, well, did you see Otto? No, we didn't see him. Well, he's in the hospital. They don't expect him to live. He sprayed his apples with something, and I guess they don't even think he's going to make it. That we were all sick for a whole week, you know. So that goes to show what a brain will do to you, and it upset the entire apple cart. Well then, I stayed in Plain then till I got my journeyman's card, and boy, I couldn't wait to get that master's. And I thought, well, I'll take that first chance I get, so I took it in March. Just a couple of days after you had to be in a journeyman 2 years, and I started barbering the 17th of January, and this was about the 20th, I guess. And I were lucky. I pulled a guy that was an easy haircut, and an easy shave, and Julius's razor was good and sharp. And the guy says, I'll hire you. So that's how. Then we went to Plain. First time in my life I've been, I guess I'm backtracking a little bit, but that's forgiven for that. But I was way up in at Ella's place, and I went backwards, but that's okay, I guess. Well, that morning when I woke up, I had cut my face on the, oh God, that house was cold. And we put team on that Chevy, and the wheels didn't even run. But we got the thing going, and we got home, and that was one of the coldest trips I've ever had in my life. Then after I got my license, I started looking for, well, before that, we were living with Goobers, you know. I got married in there too somewhere, I guess. And we went to we got married and this is going backwards, I know, but we'll have to do it that way. In 1934, we got married, and Margaret's dad said, you should go to the World's Fair. Well, we had no business going to the World's Fair because we didn't have any. Well, Margaret had more money than I did. We went to the World's Fair, and that was about, they had relatives there, so we stayed with some old maids, and we went about, saw all the sights, and I did see Sally Rand dance, a fan dancer. And that was a quarter. These gals, we took those gals along. They were broke, just like the rest of us. And they said, oh, we can't go in there. I said, I paid for this, we're going in. Well, it was a beautiful thing. But I've never saw anything like it since, because that fan, you know, she could have had a fur coat on or no clothes at all. It wouldn't make any difference. I don't know what she had on, but it didn't make any difference. Well, anyhow, then another thing I forgot to tell you, when we got back from our honeymoon, Margaret got sick. She was in bed all winter. They put you to bed for everything back then, and make it difference, so it was. And you got to bed, you were supposed to get better. She was in bed well, she was in the hospital the first week, and she was in bed till most of January and part of February. So that kind of cut our income, because she was going to get $25 a month. They had to hire another girl, so that made finance all the worse. Well, then one night, this happened after I had my license, and the boys, neither one of them come home to milk. Alfred was probably celebrating one of our elders. The old man was pretty upset. Well, we got the milk done, so now I was pretty upset, because I was only getting $10 a week, and things were pretty tough. So I told Hollis, I said, baby, I ought to quit barbering and run your farm. No, he says, Slim, he always called me Slim. He said, I want you to get yourself a barber shop and get the hell out of here. He says, Margaret is not a farmer. She is not a farmer wife. She isn't healthy enough. If you got a farm alone, that's no good. Those days, women did a lot of work in the farm. So that's when I started looking for a barber shop. Well, but his dad just didn't like the idea of a barber. He went around looking for shops. Well, we had 3 in mind. We had one pointed, Rona, and Broadhead. And I liked the one Broadhead. Gee, that was a nice shop. The one Rona was a dump. Well, he says, I'm going in and visit a guy. And I was talking to the guy about ready to buy the thing. He said, we're going home. Well, I said, what? You're not buying it. Well, I didn't say anymore. He says, he sells out every year to some dummy that comes here and buys it. And then the next starts up across the street and runs about a business. So, well, I didn't like Poynette. Margaret didn't like Poynette, so that's where we ended up in Rona. And we moved into Mrs. Schulman's barber shop. Well, it belonged to George McKee, but it was a filthy place. The upstairs was filthy, but they moved out of there. And, well, Margaret cleaned it up before we moved in, but my dad, every time he come there, I guess it turned his stomach. He went, you got to get the heck out of this house, or no place to go. There was no place to rent in Rona. You couldn't rent a place. And we only paid $11 a month for barber shop, and 3 rooms upstairs, no bathroom, had running water, no sewer. You had to carry a pail of water down. I don't know how many steps to dump it. Well, then we did we cleaned up the shop. I think we painted it. And then there's a guy come in one day selling linoleum. So this guy had a roll of linoleum. He said, I got enough to do shop. Like, well, there was 2 fellas. One rolled it on, one rolled it off, you know, and they could roll that to Madison. I bought that, and heck, when I rolled it out, I only had about 16 feet. And boy, I was upset. And I saw one of them trucks go by, and before I came to Plain, from Plain then, Al Schutz was a good friend of mine. He says, you know, I had that old car, 26 car, and says, I got a 30, it's a nice one. So I run those guys down, I run them off the road. We got out there, and of course they didn't know anything about it. But then Wilson Growth went to barber school with me, and they got him too, and he'd been in business for a while, so he should have been smarter than I got, but we didn't get. We ended up with just a piece of linoleum. At least we had linoleum around the chair. It was easy to clean. Well, every time Dad would come up, he says, you got to get out of here. Well, then finally, there's 2 old maids owned all this property where the barber shop is. And they had this corner for sale for $1,000. Well, we had curb and gutter and sewer and water, but between the cement and the sidewalk, that was just mud yet, you know. But I bought it, and Dad says, now you got to get busy and dig that basement. You do that this fall. Well, Albert Gust had a team, and Willie, so we dug, and I don't know, we just had worked a couple hours at a time. I'd hold the scraper and the plow, and it was 20 by 40, I guess. Yeah, we worked our tail off till we got the thing done. And well, he was awful good with a shovel, which I wasn't no good at all. And got it all done. And my dad said, no, you got to get your plans. Well, we got the plans. Said that's way too small. Well, we found out it was, but I'm kind of glad it was. So then we went to get bids. Well, it's come to approximately that we needed to borrow about $5,000. Went over to the bank, and the most I could get out of them was $3,500. Well, he says, you start that house now. Well, then we hired a guy from Monhor, can't remember his name, and he got the job to do the cave of the mountains up there, so he didn't want to do it. So we ended up getting Cap Haven, well, they were good carpenters. We had to pay them 75 cents an hour. And I don't know, so, God, you know, those days, they hauled the lumber down, and them guys sawed for days before they even started building. So, you know, I had to do everything by hand. Boy, Cap was 7 years old, you know. But I was never so glad as when they got the shingles on the house, they got him down to the ground. But one day, I happened to be over here, I guess at noon, and Milo come over, and boy, he was all upset. He said, I drilled the back door wrong. They did that by hand too, you know. Well, Cap said, he told him something, he said, I better do the doors myself, you better do something else. And it was all lath and plaster back them days. So, one day, well, I think Margaret did, but Margaret, and then we hired George Drive's son. Margaret and George Drive's did the finishing, because we wanted to get in by the 1st of August. So they finished it up, and 1st of August I think so. I remember it was some guy that, I suppose some of my brothers, I remember probably Robert and Lloyd, I don't know. They moved us down. We didn't have much to move anyway. We got settled in here, and and we had 3 windows on the west side of that barber shop, and God, it get hotter than pistol in here, you know. It was a hot summer. This was August. And Hank Hefty come out for a haircut, and boy, he said it's hot in here. I said it's terrible. We didn't have awning, we didn't have shades. I got done, he gets out, puts a chair over where the air conditioner is now, and he said, you cut this out till Fred gets home and put an air conditioner. Hank, I said, I haven't got $5 to pay down on it. Well, you'll never have $5 working in this sweat box, he said. Fred come out that night and wired it up. And I thanked him a good many times. I said, you sure helped me get a start, because it was a hot August. And it was all farm business. The other guys had come in, been in the heat all day, and then they come out here and sit in the hot barber chair. Well, so they'd go to the tavern and they'd say, well, why don't you go down to Johnson? He's got air conditioners. It really helped my business. I don't remember how long it took me to pay Hank off, but it took a long time because we were only getting 20 and 40 cents for haircuts. So shave, 20 cents for shave, 40 cents for haircuts. And that was, we worked, we did appointments. You did all your work at night. You'd sat around all day. And so then I did build the kitchen cabinets. I didn't know much about it, but Walter Klein lived downstairs with Wiesenbergs, and he helped me and put the cabinets in. Then Mrs. Durfer come in and saw the cabinets. You got to build mine too. Well, then I started building in the basement here. Well, I got one job after the other, and didn't know enough to charge much, you know, because I thought, well, it's extra money, and I'd do it during the day when I wasn't busy. Margaret would watch the shop, and I'd be down in the basement. And all I had was a little 7-inch bench saw, and I can't remember. I don't think I had a miter saw box either. I think we just made one out of. I think I bored one and make it out of wood. Well, then I made Walters. We got from one to the other. That's when we built the cabinet shop. And then the business got better here. And then I hired Art Hagen, help in the barber shop. And well, then it worked out, but then I still had too much to do, so Joe Reitmeyer come down and wanted me to hire Joe. Well, Burgess Elo was my lawyer. He said, you can't do that if he gets hurt. Well, I told Joe I can't hire him. Well, he says, I'll guarantee you one. So Joe worked here, I don't know how many years. And then, in the meantime, Mickey, I think, started sanding before he started. They didn't have kindergarten, so he was fine. He did a lot of sanding. Consequently, the boys started where they were. But meantime, I wasn't feeling good. I went to the doctor. He said, no, take a week off. Well, I think about that time was when we built the house too. So we bought a lot up on Schumann Street for $225 for a lot and a half. No, it was more than that. $225 for a lot, and then half of that to the rest of it. So we got started on that, and we built the garage. The year ahead, we put that up so we'd have a place to store stuff. Well, anyhow, Margaret and I went up to college. There for a week, I was fine. Come back, 2 weeks was the same thing. I went to the doctor, I said, well, he said, you took your wife home? I said, yeah. Well, he said, then you should figure out what's wrong. Well, I didn't realize, but Art was never happy. We were busy, was too busy. We wouldn't have nothing to do. How can you make a living if you aren't working? So, but as things happened, Winkleman had a stroke. So I thought, well, I said, Margaret, I said, I'll have to fire him. No, you can't fire him. You got 2 kids. So I thought, well, we need another shop. So I said, Art, go over to Charlie and rent that. And I said, you better start your own shop, because if somebody moves in, you're going to lose your job. So then Owen Charlie kicked them out. So I had to go and tell Charlie to rent it to him. And he did. And then, of course, cabinet business, then Ronnie wanted to be a barber, so he learned, but he really didn't like it. So he quit. And then I think he went to work for Jameson. And then Mick started. Ronnie, I think he got their license, did you? Before Mick did? Yeah. Ronnie got his license, and then Mick started in as apprentice. And that's when we got, and Ronnie got in the Army. Then we built on, so we could have three chairs. Then we added another chair, 4 chairs. And way back, I forgot to say, but I never thought of that till now. Benson talked me into building a dentist office, and that was this is quite a ways back from us. We built that, and then he sold out Hanson. When I guess his eyes was bothering, so we had the dentist office besides the cabinet shop out here. Well, Ronnie didn't. He got married then, so he wanted to come back in there, so put in another chair, and that went along, and then he got a chance to work in Madison, which was good for him. But he worked part-time here. And in between there, the boys built a duplex, the place where I live now. And Mickey owned half, and Ronnie owned half. So but then Mickey decided he was going to get married, so and Ronnie had to move out, so he bought a duplex, and Ronnie built another one in Madison. Well, then I sold the cabinet shop I didn't really sell it. They just bought the inventory, and Kaltenberg went in there. It lasted only about 6 months, and they give it up. And then Keller had a seizure, so he couldn't hold down a job, so he was back there for quite a few years. An old fellow by the name of that wanted a place to, and I used to get a lot of chairs and stuff to fix. I didn't like that. I said, Ray, you can stay here for nothing, but you fix all these old ladies' chairs. Good job, wasn't it? He did pretty well back there. But the only reason he came down was to smoke. His wife wouldn't let him smoke at home. Well, in the meantime, I had started to smoke, and I smoked too much. I think I burned a hole in the chair, and I think that made me quit. So I give away all my cigars and quit smoking. Well, in the meantime, I was on the village board for, I don't know, I think it's two terms. I didn't like that very good. And so I quit that. Then all of a sudden they couldn't get anybody to be president, so I took that job. I had that for two terms, and I got beat. Oh, we were gonna, the town was, they had let these people build without any sewer, water, nothing. They built the house and then they put, so then we did get things straightened out pretty well. We put in, you had the lines addition was put in, and this addition out here where, on the Gust farm, was all put in, so they all had to put in their sewer, water, curb and gutter before. But we run into all kinds of problems because things weren't organized very well. We put in the storm sewer in the spring of the year. Em used to be under water for days because kids they'd have to haul their kids to school because they couldn't get there on the water. So we put a storm sewer in. And then I was accused of putting the storm sewer in for the church. Well, it helped them too. Everybody up there got help. And they'll keep me, or beat me, so I got out of that, and that was a blessing. Well, in the meantime, when Vic got married, he wanted a barber shop. Well, I had my belly full of hiring help, so I thought I'll work for you. So I worked for Mick. As long as he'd have me around, I don't work anymore. But things worked out pretty good. Well, then when the kids grew up, didn't want to go to the cottage, we'd go up there and fish, and we did a lot of trips up there. We on our 25th wedding anniversary, we ran around Lake Superior, and that time that was considered a big trip. And we were all set. You fill up your gas, and you run out on the way. Well, heck, we were, we drove all the way to Superior the first day, and there wasn't that much to see. There was a lot of scenery. There was no place to stop. So then we ended up staying in the cottage. Well, we used to rent that cottage and had a lot of fun up there. But once the kids were out of high school, they didn't want to go up there anymore. They'd seen enough of that, so we went up there one fall to close it. Margaret said there's something wrong with the sewer. I thought something got in the, well, I had a trap that I could take the screw out because I had to drain it. And heck, nothing there. So I went out and looked at they must have been pouring lard or what have you. The whole septic system was shot. So we had to go to my house and get all the stuff. And then we stopped at the tavern. I thought I'd hire somebody. And there was half a dozen guys in there talking about jobs, and I said, I got a job for you tomorrow. Couldn't hire anybody. So I dug the thing in myself. We took pails up along the road. You couldn't buy gravel or anything back then. Margaret picked the gravel and I dug the holes. God, I guess it was 8 o'clock that night before I got done. When I got to Eau Claire, I said, we gotta stop. I can't stay awake anymore. And then slept the whole night. I come out of the toilet and I said, why don't we get rid of this thing? Margaret said, that's what I said. So we put it on the market. listed it up there, they didn't do anything. The next fall when we went up, people come and they wanted to look at it and they bought it. And I took a trip back there now, and Ronnie took me back, and it was really a nice, it's really a nice cottage. Well, after I retired, I had trouble keeping busy. I went out on farms. I made garden with Don Geiger. I decided I got to do something, so I thought I'd fix small engines. Well, I guess I went 3 weeks. I went up there the 4th week and I couldn't find my mower. Ferris Harrison says, you're going to teach woodworking. Well, I said I didn't qualify for that. Well, he said, you'll never be a mechanic. So I taught woodworking. I did pretty well at that. I got along. I taught on Monday nights, and then got about the 3rd year I had more people I could handle, so they gave me, the guy on Tuesday night couldn't get anybody to come, so I taught 2 nights for quite a while. Taught till I was 80, and I had 15 years. And I thought, boy, that's pretty good. I better quit while I'm ahead. So I quit. But then, in the meantime, you know, all those years we kept adding equipment, buy this and bought a plane and bought all stuff. So the rest of my retirement, then, oh, and then another thing. I used to cut a lady's hair. I worked part-time, you know, so I had some customers. Lady that was a nurse for the west side of Madison, so you could do that. So I did that for 15 years, from house to house, and we ended up in Middleton. And Margaret used to ride along, and I don't know what she'd crochet or do something, and we always ended up at one of my old customers. He only had, I can't remember his name, but he didn't have any legs. And I cut his hair, and then he'd always make a Manhattan. And man, he made that so strong. Well, then I couldn't drive, so we had a restaurant. We'd walk across the street, eat dinner, and then we'd go home. Well, we only got $1 a piece for them haircuts, you know. With 15 haircuts, you only had $15, but it killed a lot of time. So then I started making, when we got all this equipment, I started making stuff with it. And I did learn a lot teaching, because I had some guys who were pretty doggone good, and I learned from them. So that I got, of course, in the meantime, my kids learned, they were better than I was. But so all these, there's one thing I did learn from cutting those old fellas' hair, and of course I got all the duds of the west side of Madison, so you shouldn't judge by that entirely, but about a year and a half to 2 years we'd almost get new customers because they'd die. But I had this one couple, he always reminded me a lot of Reader. He's fly around like everything, but his wife died from a heart attack, and you know, he was fine the first year. Second year, well, Margaret noticed that I didn't. She says, you know, Bill don't look good. Well, I didn't notice anything. We get back in February, and I said, Bill, what is wrong with you? Are you sick or what? No, I'm not sick, but here I said, when my wife died, people came, they brought food, they took me out to eat. Now the telephone never rings. Nobody comes. I don't get a decent meal. Went back in February, that's the last time I saw him. I learned one thing. I don't care how old you get, you gotta do something. Now the rest of this stuff you fellas know all about anyway, so I'm gonna quit.